Have you ever wondered why so many of us work the same standard hours, 9 to 5? Why that specific block of time became the global pattern for working life? The truth is, the 9-5 schedule didn't always exist. In fact, it's only about a century old. And its story is filled with industrial upheaval, worker revolutions, corporate experiments, and social transformation. Today, we're exploring how the 9-5 was born and how it evolved into the structure we know today. Long before time cards and office buildings, work looked completely different. During the Industrial Revolution, roughly the late 1700s through the 1800s, factory workers often labored 10 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. Many of them were children. Breaks were rare, safety was poor, and exhaustion was normal. Life wasn't divided into work time and free time. For most people, work simply was life. Factories were booming, and the demand for labor kept rising. But along with that growth came exploitation. Employers controlled the clock, and workers had no legal protections. Yet out of these harsh conditions, something powerful emerged: the labor movement. Workers began to organize, protest, and demand fair hours and humane conditions. By the mid-1800s, labor leaders and activists started rallying behind a simple but revolutionary idea: the 8-hour workday. Their slogan was, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what we will. This idea spread quickly, fueling strikes, marches, and worldwide pressure on governments. In the 1860s and 1870s, some governments attempted to introduce 8-hour laws, but most employers simply ignored them. Still, workers pushed forward. In 1872, more than 100,000 workers in New York City went on strike calling for 8-hour workdays. It was a bold movement, and although change came slowly, the idea of limiting work hours was becoming impossible to ignore. By the early 1900s, momentum was building. Certain industries began adopting shorter hours. In 1906, printing firms enforced an 8-hour standard. Railroads followed with their own reforms. And in 1916, the US government passed the Adamson Act, giving railroad workers a federally protected 8-hour day. This was a major victory and showed that shorter hours were becoming a realistic national goal. World War I further accelerated this change. Governments and industries realized that exhausted workers weren't productive workers. Slowly, both businesses and lawmakers began to recognize the value of reasonable schedules. But one of the biggest turning points came from an unexpected source: a businessman named Henry Ford. In 1914, Henry Ford and the Ford Motor Company shocked the industrial world by reducing daily shifts to 8 hours while doubling wages. It seemed like an act of generosity, but Ford had practical motives. He discovered that well-rested workers were far more productive. They made fewer mistakes, produced more output, and stayed loyal to the company. And with higher wages, these workers could actually afford the products they were building, including Ford cars. Ford's success changed everything. In 1926, he made the 40-hour workweek standard at Ford factories, proving it could work on a massive scale. Other companies were pressured to follow, and the 8-hour day began spreading across the economy. But it still wasn't law. That changed in 1938, when the United States passed the Fair Labor Standards Act, creating the 40-hour workweek, establishing overtime pay, and banning the extreme schedules of the past. By 1940, the 40-hour week was fully enforced. The modern 9 to 5 had officially been born, and society quickly organized itself around this structure. Schools, transportation systems, government offices, retail schedules, and even leisure activities began syncing with the 9 to 5 rhythm. For decades, this schedule represented stability, routine, and the predictable pattern of everyday life. It shaped families, cities, and work culture. But as time went on, the world changed again. Technology advanced rapidly. Automation reduced the need for physical labor. Computers replaced paper. The internet connected workers across time zones. Many jobs no longer required people to be physically present or tied to specific hours. With this shift came a new question: does the 9 to 5 still make sense? In recent years, this question has grown louder. Remote work, flexible schedules, hybrid offices, digital tools, gig work, and asynchronous communication have reshaped the meaning of a workday. Many companies now allow workers to choose when they work. Some nations and businesses are experimenting with 4-day work weeks. Younger generations are prioritizing work-life balance, mental health, and flexible living. Despite all these changes, the 9 to 5 hasn't fully disappeared. Many corporate structures still rely on it. Schools and public systems still mirror it. Even the idea of rush hour is a leftover piece of the traditional workday. The schedule remains deeply rooted in society, even as the world evolves beyond it. So the next time you clock in for your job, remember that the 9 to 5 wasn't invented overnight. It's the product of centuries of struggle, innovation, and negotiation. It shaped the modern world in ways we hardly notice. And as society continues to transform, the 9 to 5 may one day become a historical relic, just another chapter in the story of how humans organize their time.